What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Warriors Report. It's nearly 5 a.m. here on West Coast, Canada. And I thought I'd be selfish for once. I thought I would go to sleep, but you know what? My brain just kept going and I said, no, I'm excited to talk about the Raptors. Let's talk about it because apparently the Raptors are interested in potential number two pick, Scoot Henderson. And also, there were several teams scouting the Raptors versus the New York Knicks. I'm going to be discussing what that may mean for the Raptors at the NBA trade deadline and what moves they potentially could make with some of those teams. So if you're ready to watch this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you wish to hit the subscribe button as well, that would be very much appreciated. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. Now, as you guys know, I do like to give out shout outs on my channel, and the shout out for today's video goes out to 37 Hulk. 37, thank you so much for supporting this channel through your likes and comments. It is very much appreciated. Now let's talk about the Rap City because they were reporting the Raptors have had their eyes on projected number two pick Scoot Henderson. This was being reported by Michael Grange. Now I know what people are thinking. Michael Grange also reported that the Raptors are locked in and want to draft Jalen Suggs. I will say one thing about that. The Raptors are potentially trying to, again, there were reports that they wanted to move up to the third spot to draft Evan Mobley. So perhaps the Raptors leaked that information to maybe make it a little bit easier to move up in the NBA draft. But again, we'll put those reports aside and you can take this however you want it. But this is some very interesting news, obviously, because we know the Raptors don't really have a direction. They don't know a lot of fans don't know if they're going to be either tanking or rebuilding or retooling. Now, maybe this perhaps is a false report, but if not, this could possibly be an indication of what the Raptors may do at the NBA trade deadline. Scoot Henderson obviously is a point guard, and we know the Raptors have a point guard in Fred VanVleet, who is potentially heading into free agency. Could this mean the Raptors may move Fred VanVleet at the NBA trade deadline or even in the next few days? Possibly. I will say one thing, though. I will say one thing, guys. I did a little bit of scouting on Scoot Henderson, and I will say that it's going to be a really interesting fit. Again, I'm not saying the Raptors should not draft him. It's going to be a really interesting fit along Scottie Barnes. Again, that's assuming they don't trade Pascal Siakam as well. Now, for those who may not be familiar with Scoot Henderson's game, he is someone that has excellent speed. He has good dribbling handles. He can dribble the ball. He can handle the ball really well. He's also very freakishly athletic. He attacks the basket despite he's listed at 6'3", 6'4" on most sites. He attacks the basket relentlessly. He's very athletic. He soars in for big dunks. But the thing is, when you look at some of his highlights and scouting reports, he's being compared to a young Russell Westbrook. And of course, you know Russell Westbrook's game, not a great three-point shooter, despite I know he's shooting 48%. Again, I don't know how accurate the stats are because some of the websites are reporting his stats. Some are saying there's no stats, but he's only taking 2.5 threes a game. But there have been reports about him not being a really good shooter. So you really have to question. Again, I'm not stating that the Raptors should not draft him. He is 18 years old after all. But he is one of those players that needs the ball in his hands. And you're going to have to really question that fit along with Scottie Barnes. The reason being because Scottie Barnes isn't a great shooter, then you draft someone in Scoot Henderson, who not only is not a great shooter, he's not a great three-point shooter either, but he's also made some very questionable decisions when it comes to shot selection. So that's the only question I will have. Like, you have Scottie Barnes already, who's not a great three-point shooter. Then you bring in Scoot Henderson, that is not a great three-point shooter and also wants to handle the ball as well. I mean, how's that going to really work? Again, guys, I don't want to sound negative on Scoot Henderson, and I'm not suggesting the Raptors should not draft him if given the opportunity to. But I think this is going to be very interesting that the Raptors are actually interested in him given the way he would fit. Again, he's a really interesting player. He's only 18 years old, so he's going to take time to develop. And there's not to say that he can't develop properly when he hits the NBA level and he won't become a better passer. So again, he's shown the potential, but he definitely has a lot of flaws in that fit along with Scottie Barnes. Maybe a little bit strange if the Raptors do decide to tank. But this is exciting news regardless. We're still a ways away from not only the NBA draft. We still got about a week or 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks to go to the NBA trade deadline. So we'll see what the Raptors do. Maybe they move the point guard. Maybe they don't. Maybe they have Scoot Henderson coming off the bench. We don't know. We'll see what happens. But let's talk about the next news here. And this was being reported by Adam Laskaris on Twitter that was reporting that there are representatives from the Bucks, Timberwolves, Pacers, Clippers, and Grizzlies here today checking out the Raptors Knicks game. Speculate away, he wrote. Now, those 5 teams, I will say one thing before everyone assumes that they want certain Raptors players. It could always be a possibility that perhaps they're also looking at Knicks players as well. I just find this whole scouting thing very interesting. I mean, given the fact that, a lot of the players on both rosters, on not only the Knicks and the Raptors, a lot of these players, it's not like you're going to watch college basketball. where you have not had clips of these guys all across YouTube, wherever. Like Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, if we're talking about trades, Chris Boucher, like these guys have been in the NBA for a while. You could easily find it. But one of the reasons I believe these teams are scouting, whether they are scouting the Raptors or the Knicks players, I think they're definitely scouting a lot of the Raptors players given all the trade rumors. But I also believe the reason they're scouting the Raptors so much more recently is given their team record. Like you look at the Raptors, they have great individual talent. Fred VanVleet isn't a bad player. Gary Trent Jr. is a great player. OG Anunoby is a great player. So is Pascal and Scotty. But obviously the team isn't playing well together. So perhaps they want to see what's wrong with this team and also perhaps to see how that player is performing. Now let's talk about some of these teams. The Pacers, it's a given, guys. They want OG Anunoby. They don't want a point guard. They have Tyrese. And I don't think they want a shooting guard in Gary Trent Jr. either. Not to say that they won't, but it's very unlikely they'd want him. I think they're probably targeting someone like an OG Anunoby. Obviously, that would be a very interesting trade situation. Seeing what they could offer the Raptors. I don't really, not to say that I wouldn't take a trade for them, trade from the Indiana Pacers, but there's just nothing really that really intrigues me there. Of course, Tyrese, they're not getting rid of, guys. And they're definitely not trading Benedict Mathurin as well. So again, you have to question that Pacers, Indiana and Raptors deal. Obviously, it would maybe be a Miles Turner. I'm not potentially sending OG that way. No disrespect to Miles Turner. That's not enough of a return if I'm the Raptors. Let's talk about some of the other teams. I find Milwaukee and Clippers being the most interesting teams. Again, they don't really have a lot to offer if they're looking at some of our core pieces. And when I mean core pieces, I'm talking about OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr., Fred VanVleet, and even Pascal Siakam. They don't really have a lot of their picks. We know they traded their picks. Milwaukee did in the Jrue Holiday trade, and we know what the Clippers did with the Paul George trade as well. I'm potentially thinking the Clippers are possibly looking at someone like a Chris Boucher. The reason I say that, there were reports about 4 or 5 days ago where they stated they want front court help. So maybe they're looking at Chris Boucher. And just on top of my head, throwing some names out that maybe the Raptors could target from the Clippers roster, someone like a Terrence Mann, maybe second round pick. I don't know how many picks they have anymore because they gave so many of their picks away to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And in terms of Milwaukee, again, you really have to question, unless the Raptors want Grayson Allen and they want Chris Boucher, which wouldn't, again, I wouldn't say no to that, but you really have to question. They got Bobby Portis, they got Giannis, they also have Brook Lopez as well. So I don't know. We'll see. Very interesting. But let's talk about some of the other teams as well. Now, the two teams here that really intrigue me are the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves. Obviously, the Timberwolves have their shooting guard in Anthony Edwards at the shooting guard position. So I don't exactly see Gary Trent going there. The Grizzlies, however, I could see them possibly targeting someone like OG Anunoby. Again, I know I'm going a little bit crazy. It's unlikely that they would want Pascal Siakam, not to say that he wouldn't fit there, but just given their front court with Steven Adams and Jaren Jackson Jr., I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. Again, I'm not stating that, they wouldn't want to replace Steven Adams with Pascal Siakam and slide Jaren Jackson into that center position, but I just don't see a trade there unless it's obviously for OG Anunoby. And possibly, again, like I said, if the Raptors do look to move OG Anunoby, Grizzlies have a lot of attractive pieces, man, like Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks. They have a lot of young players as well. I'm forgetting their names. I'm sure they have their first round picks as well. So they could give the Raptors a very sexy offer for OG Anunoby. Now, in terms of the Timberwolves, they want to move D'Angelo Russell. So again, I don't think the Raptors would necessarily want D'Angelo Russell. He's also heading into free agency as well. They've given their first round picks away. We know that terrible trade they did. So I mean, unless they want to do a minor trade where they're possibly getting picks or some sort of role players in return, Thaddeus Young, I'm thinking maybe Chris Boucher for something like a Nas Reed. That'd be very interesting. Again, if they want OG Anunoby, man, I really have to emphasize on this. I really like Jaden McDaniels from that team. He's an amazing defensive player. He's also hitting his threes really well. So again, we'll see what happens at the NBA trade deadline. It sounds very funny to me that a lot of these teams are coming to watch the Raptors game all of a sudden. Again, makes no sense to me. These aren't college players that you haven't seen clips of before. Guys like OG, Fred, Gary have been around the league for quite some time, and you could easily find those clips, but obviously they must be doing it for a reason. But very interesting to see this. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts, though. I know a lot of people, I will say one thing, guys, before I go on to the trivia question. I know a lot of people buy the hypes of certain guys, and I don't want to be a downer on Scoot Henderson. He's going to be a good NBA player. But I know people buy the hypes of certain draft players like Jalen Suggs, Jaden Hardy was it, the last draft. And a lot of people were projecting him to go in the top 10, top 15. And look where he ended up. So again, All I'll say is just stop going off of hype. Let's do a little bit more scouting. But I'm very interested to hear what you guys think. Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, I do have a trivia question for you today. And that trivia question is, what is the highest number of assists in one game by a Toronto Raptors player? Is it A15? Is it B19? Is it C17? Or is it D13? So whoever answers this trivia question correctly first in the comment section gets a shout out in my next video. So that will be it for today's video, guys. If you're still watching, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to hit the subscribe button as well. And that will be it for today's video. So thank you so much once again for watching. And I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.